Water's not like other sustainable development issues. Water is a key fundamental business risk. We're facing increasing water scarcity because of population growth and climate change and changing consumption patterns. So in order to ensure that they stay in business, I think food and drink companies need to address and need to consider the risks that they face and how to mitigate them. WWF is a conservation organisation, and we're interested in protecting biodiversity in different types of ecosystems, and freshwater ecosystems are a key one of those types of systems we want to protect. Work that we've done recently has shown that over the last 40 years, freshwater ecosystems in particular have declined faster than either terrestrial or marine ecosystems. And the likely pressures that we're facing in the future from population growth and climate change and changing consumption patterns mean that freshwater systems are at greatest risk of further declines. Businesses in the UK should be concerned because although sometimes we can be perceived as a very wet country, we're actually a very populous country as well, which means that per capita there's not actually a great deal of water available. And even though in some parts of the country it can be very wet, in other parts it can be very dry. Thinking now about the southeast of England, we've had 2 very dry winters in succession, which is causing significant problems for agriculture, particularly in East Anglia, and particularly farmers who are irrigating. I think food and drink businesses in the UK should care about this issue because water is a fundamental business risk to them. And water scarcity problems and water quality problems are potentially going to limit their operations and pose risks to their supply chains in terms of the sustainability and availability of key ingredients. Well, I think the first steps for UK food and drink businesses is to address their water efficiency and the water quality impacts. But there's a need to go much further beyond that and look at water risks in the supply chain and ensure that their suppliers are addressing their water risks and their water dependencies. And I think in the case of the particular catchments river catchments where businesses are located, they should think about engaging with existing stakeholder dialogues and processes for water management to ensure that the rivers keep flowing where they are and the groundwater levels are maintained so that they continue to be able to abstract the water that they need. For some companies it's quite difficult to understand where their supply chains are located geographically. If they're buying particular commodities that are bulked together, it's not always that easy to do. But you can, by looking at, for instance, water footprint maps, you can identify what are the key sourcing areas for particular commodities and what are the water footprints of growing or producing those particular commodities in those locations. So at WWF we use this conceptual model we call the water stewardship ladder to try to show businesses how they can get from where they are now to being good water stewards. And it moves along a series of steps. So initially we start trying to get businesses to become more aware of water issues and to think about water in its widest context and supply chain issues and water resource issues at a catchment scale. And then we move up stages to try and get companies to then understand the impact that they're having on water, both direct impact and through their supply chains and their purchasing. And then we try to get businesses to address those impacts by taking actions such as water efficiency measures, looking at effluent quality, and also looking more widely and working at a catchment scale with others to try to mitigate the risks that they face and to try to improve the sustainability of the water flows that they depend on. And then the next stages are really to start thinking more than just at the operational level, but to start to engage more widely with stakeholders at a catchment scale and more widely at a national policy level to try to influence how water is managed. So in terms of our engagement with business, we develop partnerships with individual companies, but we also develop sets of tools that can be applied by those companies, but also much more widely. And as part of that, we've developed what we're calling a risk filter, which is going to be an online tool where any business, including SMEs, can put in the locations of their operations and, if they know it, the locations of key elements of their supply chain. and it will give them information about what are the water risks that they're going to be exposed to in those particular locations, and give suggestions as to what types of actions they can put in place to mitigate those risks. I think food and drink businesses need to engage with other stakeholders in the water context. So think about who else is dependent on water in their catchments. I think they need to look at and understand the water risks that they face, not just in terms of their direct operations, but within the wider catchments and in the supply chains that they depend on. And also I think they need to look at developing mitigation plans, so understanding what practical actions they can take to address those risks. The Every Last Drop campaign, the information that provides for food and drink businesses is very closely aligned to the sorts of messages that WWF try to give our corporate partners on water.